Welcome to Vitafriends Voices, a podcast brought to you by Vitaflo, where we will share your stories. Each episode will bring you engaging interviews with inspiring individuals who are either living with a protein disorder or are experts at the forefront of their field.
So the focus of today's episode is Homocystinuria type 2, or HCU type 2 for short. And our guest here today is imear, a remarkable young woman with HCU type 2, who is here to share with us her journey of living with this rare disorder. Now, before we dive into today's episode, let me briefly explain what HCU type 2 is. So homocystinuria is a group of rare inherited metabolic disorders caused by defects in the breakdown of the amino acid homocysteine, and it results from a deficiency in the CBS enzyme. Now, if left untreated, this can lead to the accumulation of toxic metabolites, which can cause serious damage to the eyes, bones, vascular system, and central nervous system as well. However, if HCU is well managed from birth, then people like imear can live normal, healthy lives. So welcome to the Vitafriends Voices podcast, imear.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, guys.
Just for our audiences to get to know you a little bit, perhaps just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
So my name is imear. I am 25 and I have homocystinuria type 2. So the homocystinuria I have is vitamin B non-responsive. So I have to follow a strict low-protein diet consisting of 15 grams of protein. So we call it exchanges, but grams of protein really. Is what it is. And I have to take 3 supplement drinks a day as well. So they're kind of supplement the protein that I'm not getting from a regular human diet. So from meat and fish and things like that. So yeah.
And what's your earliest memory, imear, of having HCU?
I feel like when I was in primary school, I started noticing that my lunches were maybe a wee bit different to other people's. I remember I used to do kind of projects in school kind of about homocystinuria, and this is what I have and this is what my diet consists of, and people would be like, whoa, that's crazy. You can't have protein. How do you build muscle and how are you alive? Used to be questions I get. And I think like noticing the lunches were different as well. It used to become birthday parties. So I'd go to birthday parties and my birthday cake would come out and I would blow out the candles. I would still get my normal birthday cake, but I wouldn't be able to have that. I would have my own kind of separate sweets and things. So I'd notice it in that way as well. But yeah, I would say they'd be my kind of mainly kind of early moments of noticing about the diet, yeah.
And you mentioned that your friends were intrigued, shall we say, by the difference in your diet. How would you explain the differences to them?
I would I suppose from a young child, it would have been, I just can't have that. I just can't have what you're eating for your lunch. I can't have a ham sandwich because it would make me really sick. Or I can't have kind of what you would have for your dinner because I would have to go to the hospital, really kind of childlike kind of descriptions. And they were things that made sense to me. But as I got older, then it was much more easier to kind of explain it in ways that related to other people. So like the idea of, it's like I have a vegan diet, it's like a vegan diet, but a lot more strict because you can have lentils and you can have chickpeas and, you can have all those in unlimited, whereas I have to count all of those things in and I have to, take away the protein side of a vegan diet. And that helped people, I think, kind of click and register like, I relate to that. That's a bit more relatable than you just can't metabolize protein, I think relating to what people understood was something that was quite easy as I got older. But as a child, it was mainly kind of that'll make me sick, or that would make me unwell when I get older. And then people were very protective in school. People, all my classmates would have been very, are you sure you can have that? Do you know how much protein is in that? When I would be telling them, and they would, even through secondary school, they'd kind of say, and so how many grams of protein's in that now? And I would say, I know the protein content of absolutely everything off by heart. They'd be like, wow.
And just picking up that then, before we develop the sort of, your sort of moments of support, etc. Just picking up that sort of your early childhood days that you were talking about there, imear. Mm-hmm. And what's the craziest question anybody has ever asked you?
Craziest question. I feel like some people would say, would you get sick if you had some chicken? And I remember been asked one time, so if you had a chicken burger, would you just drop dead on the spot? And I says, no, probably not. I says, I would take a couple of chicken burgers and then maybe something would happen to me. But yeah, people they just couldn't wrap their heads that it was so dangerous. And they wanted to know how dangerous, and what would happen, kind of.
To put a scale on it.
Yeah, to kind of understand how this makes sense, because they can eat things, normally, but I can't. Yeah.
So you went for the shock factor.
Yeah, you had to add the drama. I'd be very dramatic myself anyway, so.
And perhaps just that those listening and watching, it's not that would happen.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, it's. I suppose just it was a way of kind of that I understood to understand the severity of things. Kind of that things if you ate like a normal human, for repetitive years, it can have some lasting effects on you. And as a child, I think that's really hard for a little child to understand and to get that eating your healthy foods and your proteins and, things that make you big and strong, and that could have negative consequences, I think is very, very hard. And when you just want to be the same as everybody else, it's hard to cement that in your own head that could be, negative consequences could happen from that. Yeah.
So if we just take you back to your teenage years, what's your most prominent memory, I suppose, of being a teen with HCU?
So when I first started secondary school, I definitely I was at the prime time of my teenage years of wanting to be the same. So kind of wanting to fit in as a child. I knew no one else with homocystinuria. It was so uncommon. I didn't have a community of people. I would go to kind of events every now and again, but I wouldn't say I had met the community that I now to this day know. So when I started secondary school, I definitely, went in with the mentality of nobody needs to know this. It took me a while. I think there was a lot of shame in being different. And I think I started with the thought of if nobody knows, nobody can judge, and nobody can have an opinion on it. And so that was the kind of way that I first went into school. And until I remember then my best friend had came out from someone from my primary school, because obviously everyone in primary school was absolutely aware and very kind of nearly helicopter looking after me, really protective, like, are you sure you can have that? And I was at a clinic appointment one time, and my best friend of about 6 months at this stage, she was told by someone else that I had a metabolic disorder, which absolutely no fault of, it was very widely known through my primary school friends. And that I think it helped bridge the gap then. So when she was told, then it was a kind of thing of, why didn't you just tell me? Like, there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely. Like, and that, I think that validation then of her being some completely non-judgmental, it was so freeing, it was as a kind of thing of, oh geez, this isn't a big deal actually. This is okay. You're not going to say, I can't be your friend, you can't digest protein. It was a thing of like, yeah, it was really validating, I think, to kind of bridge that gap. And it became through my secondary school years, I took the bull by the horns. I used to, any free class, I'd be drawn the cycle of the metabolic disorder. For anyone that would listen to me, it became this, let me share, this part about myself, and people found it fascinating. And I think for me, who knew so much about it, it was like, oh, if I can share this, and if this is interesting to you, this is great. I felt, it was like, you felt validated in people being interested, in people asking questions, and the shame factor was completely taken away. Like, it was, I feel like I really came out of myself kind of then, because it was this thing of, I don't need to hide. There's nothing about me that I need, I shouldn't be ashamed of anything to do with this. I'm different, and that's great. My mum would always say, you're very unique, you've got ginger hair. And I say it's strawberry blonde. She'd say, you've ginger hair, you've lovely freckles. Absolutely. You have lovely freckles on your face. That's a beauty, sign of beauty. And then she'd go on and say, but the metabolic disorder as well, you're just unique. And when I was first started secondary school, I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know that side of things. I was like, oh, whatever, I don't want to be the same. But then I think it had naturally it all started to piece together through my time in secondary school, and I definitely kind of sunk into this whole thing of this is who I am. You found your voice nearly as well, so it was definitely freeing kind of to get to that stage.
And Emer, one thing that comes through or shines through with yourself is how you've embraced that uniqueness.
Yeah. I think it's very, for me, it was a very hard thing to get to. So I think when I did, I was like, this is what it's all about. Life is so short, you never know what's going to happen. And to be sitting in a box and keeping yourself from being yourself is crazy, when so many people out there are so genuinely interested. And I think so many people as well want to know and want to help and want to like broaden their knowledge of things as well. And I think that if I can have any wee part of doing that for anybody, be it in any way that anybody is in any way different, like that would be a job well done for me, I think. So yeah.
So you've talked about your uniqueness, you've embraced that. Do you know anybody else with HCU?
Now I do. Only in recent, I'd say 2023, when I came home from Birmingham, I got linked up with Vitaflo, and the connections have just they're just adding one by one. It just feels like every day, even just yesterday, I heard of someone else that I'd met through clinic is still bopping about, and it's just, it's great. It's absolutely great. I'd say the connections are only growing. I've had people, especially since I've been posting a lot on my Instagram, I've had people reach out to me, kind of, mothers of children with HCU. And again, like, to be able to, if all I can do is relax someone, even in the slightest, this lady had asked, about with school lunches, and kind of noticing that the child was different to other people and how I navigated that, and to be able to share my experience of that, and she just said, it just relaxed her and relieved her a little bit. That's absolutely all I can hope for, because we're different, and that's absolutely fine. That's great. There's no sugarcoating it. I think there's no way of saying, but I kind of grew up with the whole thing of, sure, it's grand, it's fine, everything's fine. It's a big Irish kind of saying that it's grand, sure, get on with things, But I think embracing being a wee bit different and having a wee quirk about you, I think it's really empowering. It gets to a stage then where you feel like, you feel very empowered, definitely.
It sounds like you're almost creating a little community through your platform.
Yeah. It's I'm surprised at the amount of people that I thought would get sick of it, and I thought, about making my HCU page like a separate one rather than stream it through my own one. And I thought, do you know what, why would I? This is me, and this is what I'm about, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. You don't have to like it, it's but the amount of people that have kind of asked me questions and have said, Jesus, and I never would have known that about imear. That's, it's crazy. So yeah, it feels like it's worthwhile.
But your platform offers such a great insight into what it's like living with HCU as an adult. And like you mentioned there, I bet it's really empowering for parents of children with HCU to see how well you are doing.
I think we had a conversations there lately, being around parents and the parent ambassadors as well. As I said, like, I'm so aware that in these early stages, when your child has been diagnosed with this thing, that it's the unknown factor of, it's understanding the severity that, it's so important and vital and fundamental for the child's safety and their well-being to follow the diet, but also to know that, it doesn't have to, there's no way that it's gonna, so kind of, you're not guaranteed to have this fate if you don't follow the diet. There's light at the end of the tunnel. There's not, be kind to yourself if, there's mistakes, because for every mistake you learn 1,000 lessons, and it's only to make a mistake is to kind of, to learn the severity of the diet, I think, because I definitely, I through my teenage years, I pushed boundaries, I rebelled, but it was a thing of, I learned from every single thing I did, everything. Any time off the diet, it was always very well controlled. Thankfully, it was when I was a child. So my parents, my mommy was able to keep a tight eye on me, and my family were so supportive. Like everybody just went above and beyond. There was no limitations. There was nothing that I couldn't do, or there was nothing that I was told, oh no, you have a metabolic disorder, you won't be able to do that. Everything was just, we'll make it work. We'll find a way, and you can do everything that anybody else can do, and you're not being held back by anything. So, yeah.
just picking up something you said there. What mistakes have you made?
So I'd say when I was younger, kind of in primary school, I remember would have been a case of maybe breaking it, sneaking on the sly. Would it be a Fruit Loop winder to exchange for something else? But no, look, in the grand scheme of things, it was, the severity of it wasn't, I'd say, that large, but it was very well. It was the way that it was managed is what helped, between my family having such a supportive kind of approach to it and, helping me navigate those times of rebellion, but also the more knowledge, the better. I was educated on the risks and the complications that can happen. And it took those things to kind of get to the stage where I am now of feeling like I have full control over things and, the ball's in my court here and I'm responsible of my own health and my own safety. Yeah, so it's...
So when you did struggle, who was there to support you?
My mammy was probably one of the key kind of roles in my life. She would have been, she would have really, really had my back in kind of times when it was hard. But my mammy and my whole family, I would have we have a small family, but it's a very tight-knit family. It would be my mammy, my granny and granddad. My granny says she remembers times of sitting out the back step and the cows were, walking past in the field and she'd say, "Oh, look over there, Emer, look at the cow," and she'd shovel a bit of yogurt into my mouth because I was a really bad eater. And again, then like my mammy, between taking time out of work, taking me to metabolic clinics, they were far away from us in Donegal. We had to travel 4 hours to get to the nearest clinic in Dublin. Time out of school to go for bloods, like weekly bloods, sometimes it'd be monthly bloods. Every one of my family was very well equipped to be able to deal with it, and they knew the ins and outs of my diet. They knew I was on really low grams of protein as a child, and then it eventually went up higher. But everyone kind of knew roughly kind of what my exchanges were and how to kind of count them in and make dinners kind of suit no matter where I was. Yeah.
So did you make a day trip out of your trips to Dublin in terms of to make it more normal, in inverted commas? How did you go about that? If the audience are out there thinking, we have to face these weekly or monthly trips, how did you make that more manageable?
So we used to get the hospital bus down. So we used to have to get up at 6 a.m. I was a really bad traveller. Some of the drinks would be a bit, heavy on the stomach. So usually we would get a little bit of time to have a wee trip down O'Connell Street. And it might be, was it going to the cinema? It could be going to Penny's. It could be just anything to make it feel a little bit less medical and kind of... Usually, the dietitians would let me out a wee bit early, or, I would say to Dr. Navari, "Are we going to be here that long? I want to be getting to Penny's. I want to get a few treats after this." And he would say, let the girl go to Penny's. But yeah, no, I think usually, it was a kind of a case of, there was no, it was a day off school, it was relaxed kind of a day. And I got on. I had a really good relationship, I'd say, with the paediatric services here in Ireland. They know you from you're born until 18 years of age when I left Ireland to go to England for university. And they're there for all the hard times, all the good times. I remember the consultant used to kind of say, "So where are you going next, Emer?" Because we had a family over in the States and we were constantly going different places. And I think that in itself just shows how there was absolutely no limitations. There was never a place that was too far, nor a place that, was going to be impossible to work around. I never felt as though it held me back at all, genuinely at all. Times that it was difficult, times that it was challenging, yes, when I felt different and I wanted to be the same. But in the grand scheme of things, there was never an event I couldn't go to or something that we couldn't work around.
And you talked about leaving Ireland to head to Birmingham,
yes,
for university. How did you manage that transition period?
I would say that was actually something that I kind of took in my stride, really. I moved over at 18 and I was very much so, this is my big break. I'm going to go over and I'm going to be I am going to be the small fish in this big pond, and I'm going to really kind of take control here. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was over and I studied for 3 years, and I worked for 2 years then after. But in the initial period of me moving over, I remember the time it kind of set in, and I was thinking, this is real now. Mommy's leaving, and once she goes, it's all down to me here. And it was great. Like, it was absolutely great. It was, everybody again knew about it. It was a kind of case of, I don't need to. It's a new layer for other people to get to know me with. And people again found it so fascinating. I think having the metabolic disorder shaped what I then did in university. So I went into the background of healthcare. I was weighing up between dietetics and speech and language therapy, and I thought, I'll always have dietetics in my life. I'll always have the nutrition side of my life with having the metabolic. So yeah, I decided to go for speech and language therapy, and yeah, it was great. It was absolutely great. I feel like I became a proper foodie over in England.
Okay.
Between getting to know, different flavors, and I first discovered fajitas over here, and that might sound crazy, but it's all those wee things. And when you go away and you learn new things, and you're meeting new people, and they're having different influences on you, it was great. I ended up now being best friends with somebody from Donegal, but again,
And you met in Birmingham.
Yeah, we both studied in the same course. But yeah, look, that's just the.
And how did you manage nights out as a student, as a typical student? How was that?
It was good. Like, it was, I feel like I would have, on the nights out, like, I feel like I would have, for freshers and all that, I always went to them. There was never a case of, I can't do this, I'm not going to be able to. It just meant then the next day, you had to be really strict with sticking to the diet, taking the drinks. Although it's a thing of, when you don't feel your best, it's the last thing you kind of want to take. But it's the main thing that will help for a hangover.
I can relate moving to a different country for university. I did the same thing, but I don't have a metabolic disorder. So what was that transition like, I suppose, just thinking about how did you go from your metabolic centre in Ireland to the one in England? How was that managed, and what were those steps like once you were at the metabolic centre in England?
So I think with the adult services, it definitely, how supportive they were really, really helped in managing my trajectory then with being in Birmingham, with the metabolic disorder by myself. They were very much so, they let me know I was the youngest, person in their clinic, and they were very much so, if you need anything, they were so, you didn't feel on your own when you were part of a team. You're part of a whole system here. You have a range of medical professionals, from doctors, from dietitians, from nursing, from pharmacy. Like, the teams are brilliant, and that they're always, I feel like I landed on my feet kind of with the clinic I was in. Everyone was so helpful. But ultimately, like, it's down to yourself, and it's thinking of new ways. Like, it's not a one size fits all. So between learning that, it helps me to have my supplements kind of out in front of me on the kitchen counter to remind me, in the morning to take them, like simple things like this that you just wouldn't, it sounds so simple and it sounds so, but it was genius at the time. I was like, this is, because you would forget. Maybe I would go to university and I'd be like, oh, it's hidden away somewhere, and I wouldn't remember to take it with me, and then it's a whole panic. But with having them sitting out on the counter, that helped, So yeah, I would say that was kind of the main, having the supportive team was really helpful. But I would say the transition to the adult services, I definitely at first was kind of like, oh, I thought I was going to be a bit more mollycoddled here. Because it's the nature of kind of pediatrics is, it's, there is that element of I'm the adult now and I have to step up. And I think it's really important to create that difference too, because you are in charge, you are guiding your own journey, and nobody's going to do it for you, unfortunately, when you're away from family. And there's only so much that can be done over FaceTime, and so much reminding and prompting. But even in terms of the bloods, they were different. I would have taken venous samples at home, and then over in England it was the blood spots, and then back home now, since it's the venous samples again. So even kind of understanding the differences in the levels was first tricky, but you work ways around it. And I think it's advocating for yourself and being able to learn that if something isn't working, I have to voice this in order to come to a conclusion and work together to be able to get that. So we found a way of multiplying, so it would transfer to the Irish levels, So, it's things like that. It's been able to kind of say, this is my priority and this is the way I would like to manage my diet, and how can we work together to bridge that gap and to find new ways and new alternatives for things as you progress. Because I think one thing will work at one stage and then something will change. And then you'll have to alter and kind of, because you enter different phases of your life. In the time that I was in England, life throws hurdles at you, and somebody who was a massive support in my life and in my diet at home became unwell. And I think navigating that through the extra layer of thinking that you have with your metabolic condition is very, very hard. It was my uncle who it was. He was very, very, very supportive of my from early childhood up until adulthood, constantly, ringing and worrying about me, and just having my back and kind of having, motivating me and asking, egging me on when I'm doing my half marathons with my granddad, and kind of asking about my time, really interested in things. He unfortunately, took sick and has since passed away, but navigating that along with the metabolic disorder, you could have easily kind of thrown in the towel. But I think seeing the courage he had to go through his illness, all it could do was motivate you to kind of go through your own storm and push through when times are tough, because it's very easy. You can either lie down or you can stand up and face it. So.
As a very keen runner myself, and I know you are as well, just tell us a little bit more about your half marathons with your granddad.
Yeah, so my granddad, he will hate me saying this now. He has done over, it's put numbers on it. He's done over 200 and let's say maybe 70 marathons in his lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
Yeah, so he's definitely kind of encouraged that side of my life in terms of fitness and exercise, and moving your body and getting into exercise and making it a kind of lifestyle. So he got into it in his 30s, and he took me under his wing when I was kind of living at home during COVID. We did loads of half marathons together. So we would have done them at his pace. So we would have walked them together. Sometimes he would egg me to, say, go on, would you ever, go run you on and I'll meet you after, kind of thing. Mind you, he took me out for his own. He could set the pace other times. But yeah, no, he was a really positive kind of influence in my life in terms of the fitness and the exercise, as was my uncle, Aidan too. So, yeah. And
how about the recovery aspects of after you've done some sport with HCU? How have you managed that?
So I think it's something I'm starting to learn a little bit more now recently, is I think it's a real motivating factor for taking the drinks and keeping on top of the drinks and the supplement protein shakes and things, because the way I make sense of it in my head is, most people will take a protein shake after exercising, or most people will, be on creatine or whatever it is, to help with the recovery of their muscles and the growth. And that's the way I have made sense of it in my head. I take my low protein drinks for that supplement as well. And I want to build muscle, I want to do all the things that everybody else does. So that's my way of doing it. It's just a different approach to the exact same formula that the average human would do themselves. I think that I think I'll be really intrigued to see kind of with new research and hopefully, in talking and sharing your story and spreading awareness for homocystinuria, with it being that little bit more rare, I would hope to find something similar in terms of kind of studies, around sport and nutrition and recovery and growth, for muscles. I think that would be brilliant to see more research pumped into that area, for guidance, I suppose, for healthcare professionals, for us living with it. And yeah, I think that would be my goal for homocystinuria, for the research and development side of things.
And I just want to acknowledge your uncle, because I'm sorry to hear he's no longer with us, but it shows how important support is, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And you mentioned that you got parents following you. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to go back to, I guess, has your mom and your close family ever expressed how they felt when you moved to England into a different service, into adult services?
Yeah.
How did they feel about no longer being, or I guess you taking control and becoming independent?
I think it's definitely something that is a challenge. I think my granny will never not worry about me. And I think all of my family will, but it all comes from a really good place of, they care and they support me massively. And I think sometimes it is, boundaries get blurred. Mum will say, I actually said this very recently. She said, I historically was on 4 grams of protein when I was young. And she said one day, you can't have chocolate. When I turned to her and I says, because that was a lot of the time through my childhood of things that was the narrative. You wouldn't waste, if you're 4 grams of the day, you wouldn't waste someone chocolate. But, it's just reminding her kind of saying, no, like I can now, I'm on 15 grams, I can count it in if I want to. So it's advocating for yourself. But I think when I first moved over, there was definitely some worry and kind of how is she going to navigate things. And you do, you keep in contact, but ultimately your support system, I have found anyway with my support system, it's always been my family. My family will have my back till the day I died. They're always going to be there for me. And even if it is a kind of a worry that I have or something that I need to run through with somebody, it's them then that that they know you the best, that they're able to advise best, and then leaning back on your metabolic team for if it's something more clinical. But if it's something, you're looking for advice on what to have for dinner, your mommy's always there. She'll always answer the phone. She won't turn me away.
And how does your family feel about you having taken an active role in becoming a Vitaflo ambassador?
Oh, massively proud. Yeah, massively. I was on the phone last night and I was saying to Mum, do you have any advice on what I can say? And she says, you know your story. You know your story better than anybody else, and nobody can write your story for you. It's yours and you own it. And I think she's massively proud. I think it's a big stepping stone for us because we went so long with not having the opportunities. And I think partly being up in Donegal, we're in the northwest of Ireland. We're kind of far away from Dublin. We're far away from all where everything happens. And it is easy to kind of feel a little bit disconnected with the whole, the movement of metabolics and with spreading awareness and things. And absolutely, I think they're thrilled. They're absolutely delighted to kind of see me putting myself a wee bit out of my comfort zone, not going to lie. They're excited to see that. And I think they're proud, definitely.
And you touched on about your, how life has progressed. So any advice to people living with HCU in terms of life's events like dating, like meals out? How have you managed that, and what advice would you give people?
Yeah, so in terms of, I'm going out with somebody that I went to primary school with. So he was in my primary school class. So it's funny the way the wheels turn around. But yeah, so he would have known all about the metabolic side of things from a very young age. In school, I feel like, again, people remember funny things. Like people would say, oh, you're the one that used to eat the Skittles at the birthday parties because they were a safe one to have. But yeah, like I think in terms of all that, like it's finding the support within there. Like, Cormac is great. He would sit and get involved with making the shakes, and he would say, oh, what have you tried about this? And what about adding this here into it? And it's somebody who will work with you, I think is so important. Not that they have to take the bull by the horns, but, to have someone who's interested and kind of motivated and wanting to help is a massive, massive help. In terms of eating out, I think it's something that I'm in recent years kind of starting to become a bit more comfortable. I think when you have an experience of being out and someone turns around and says, I'm not able to cook your low protein pasta, or I'm not able to, I don't know what that is, and you have an allergy, and the ears prick up, and it's this whole thing of you don't want to be a nuisance and you don't want to create, any kind of unsettling with anyone else. But there's a fine line between advocating for yourself and getting a service that you're paying for, that you're entitled to. So I would say definitely in recent times with dining out and kind of eating out, I'm more than happy to kind of say, I can see that you have nut on the menu. Can I see if there's any way of doing that without the nut in it, or whatever it is, or without the, if it's a protein based thing, tofu. Often a lot of kind of vegetarian meals will have tofu in it. So is there any way I can have that spice bag without the tofu? Camille Thai, there's a place in Dublin, they do spice bags. So it's like chips with loads of different spices and kind of veggies and stuff. It's a big thing in Ireland. I feel like it's a big Irish kind of delicacy. But like there's, just asking kind of to alter it kind of a wee bit so as it's more suitable for my diet. It's something that it's a great thing to be able to do, and it comes with confidence, and it definitely depends on the day, kind of how much I feel like I want to choose this battle. But often, often it's not. I mean, often people are more than happy to help and more than happy to accommodate. So yeah.
And how about your career progression?
In terms of
advice, in terms of how you've adapted?
Yeah, like I think, and so with following the diet, I think I like to kind of see the drink substitutes and things. I tell myself it's brain food. So, I tell myself if I want to be able to, do well in my job, progress in my career, help other people, I have to look after myself. At the end of the day, and I would give that advice to anyone, no matter what kind of role they're working in, no matter whether it's healthcare, no matter, you have to be there for yourself first to be able to show up for other people. And I would say in terms of the progression in my job, definitely the brain food side of things, I would say, I take real great pride in making my lunches for work, putting time and effort into presenting them nicely and bringing out all my fruit and all the other things as part of my lunch. And I have kind of a vlog, and I would do things, and this is what I'm taking, and this is how many grams of protein's in this. And I see it in terms of the career progression. This is how vital it is, and this is how important it is, so as I can keep my brain active and keep it healthy and keep going.
You've done so well, and you're still very young, you still got a lot of life to live. Mm-hmm. But if you were to take yourself back to, say, 10 years ago, a teenage girl, and someone is in your shoes now, what's the advice that you would give them?
I think the first thing would be just the idea of embracing the difference, embracing kind of taking the opportunity to educate other people and not to be scared to say something that's not the same as everyone else. I think especially when starting secondary school, it's a really big transition period. You're going from, a small school maybe to a massive, massive big school. And I think it's very easy to kind of lose yourself within that and to want to follow the way everyone else is. And I think it's definitely just been able to embrace the difference, embrace the change, and being different is absolutely okay. Like it's not anything to be thinking negatively about. But advocating for yourself as well. So when it comes to going out for a meal, what's the point sitting with a side salad and chips? You can absolutely alter any meal out there. You can ask, if it's a case of bringing your own low protein foods. It's something I wish I did a lot more when I was that age. I wish I tried a bit more, because I think, as I said, it just takes one bad experience to put you off. But it's 9 times out of 10, people are okay when they understand, and when you explain clearly and explain in a way that helps them understand, and not taking any kind of backlash, or not even backlash, but any kind of like someone not working with you, not to take that as criticism or not to take that as a negative situation. They just don't know, and that's okay. It's about us kind of educating them and helping people to get on our level and to recognize that it is tricky and it is challenging, but this is what we can do to navigate it.
Yeah, because you're not just asking these things for the sake of it.
Of course, yeah.
There's a purpose.
It's not to be difficult for any benefit of anyone else, other than just, advocating for our own needs and ourselves, and making sure we have a lovely meal that we're more than entitled to.
Indeed. You've talked a lot about your sort of presence online and the advice you've been giving out there. So let's just think about 3 top tips for giving advice in your role as a Vitaflo ambassador, because you've sort of taken on that journey. You're clearly enjoying it. So what sort of 3 tips would you give for people who want to sort of take on an advocacy role?
Say no to nothing. Say no to absolutely nothing. if an opportunity lands at your doorstep, you say yes, even if it feels like the most difficult thing in the world. Say yes, because it's the only way to grow as a person. It's the only way to build your confidence in yourself and your metabolic disorder and your advocacy skills for you and for everyone else as well. If you have an idea, voice it, like don't keep anything kind of, the sky is the limit with all this stuff. The sky is the absolute limit. Don't think any job is too big or too small or, not significant. Everything is important to share. And I think our stories are so unique, but so similar. We all have a very similar management of the diet and a very similar kind of structure for things. But every story comes with its own quirks and its own, it's built by, your family and your morals and your values and what shapes who you are. And we're all so different. Every one of us is so different. And then, sorry, that's a long point. And then, what's the other thing? I would say probably not to think that people don't care about your story. I think to validate yourself and that you come with knowledge and expertise that the next person doesn't have, and the next person won't have the same as yourself. So to just be confident in your own self and your own knowledge of things and the way that works for you. But it's so individual. Everything is so individual. Something that works for me might not work for someone else, but then at the same time it could work as well. So you never know until you say it out and until you share your tips.
Say no to nothing. I absolutely love that. And where can people find you on Instagram? What is your Instagram handle so they can follow you for advice?
So I'm imear McGlynn's. So I say it's Emer like lemur without the L. So, but it's EIMEARMCGLYNN _ So that'd be my Instagram handle. And then, I'm on Facebook as well, but it's in Irish, so I might link that in the comments or something. But yeah, absolutely. I post on my Instagram as much as I can. So it's good. We have to build this community.
Emer, thank you very, very much. Your enthusiasm is absolutely infectious, and thank you for sharing what you've shared with us today.
Thank you very much
indeed.
Thanks, Graham, and thanks, Kit. Thanks so much.
And to you, if you like this episode, please like and subscribe to this podcast and share with anyone you think might benefit from tuning in. Thank you for joining our vibrant community of Vitafriends, and for more information, please visit our Vitafriends website, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye.